Thanks everybody for coming. This is going to be a great panel, very, very important issue. Before I introduce Sam, I want to say, this is one of the issues that AAJ has been working on. In the last Congress, we worked really hard to remove the immunity provisions from PLACA with gun manufacturers. Unfortunately, we were a little bit short in the last session, but it's a fight that we don't intend to give up. So we're going to be fighting, in the halls of Congress as well as in the courtrooms on this issue. But what I'd like to do is introduce Sam Dolce from Milestone. Milestone's been a diamond sponsor of AAJ. Our diamond sponsors, all of our sponsors, are incredibly valuable. So we really appreciate you coming and supporting Milestone as well as this program. Milestone streamlines mass court QSF administration through innovative technologies and provides tailored plaintiff settlement planning. Sam serves as an attorney with the company and is often the face of Milestone, so it's likely that you've seen him before. So without further ado, Sam.
Hey everybody, thank you for being here today. So today's panel was created with intention and purpose. On May 14th, 2022, my hometown, our hometown of Milestone, Buffalo, New York, was forever changed. 2 blocks from where I graduated high school, 10 people lost their lives in a mass shooting. 3 were injured, and the community was altered. Unfortunately, these harrowing events are not unique. Frankly, they're not even uncommon. That's why we're here today. Milestone has supported AAJ for a decade. I want to thank them for building a space where we can have these important conversations and really kind of get into those issues. As the Diamond sponsor, we get 2 hours of programming every year, and we try to use that program to talk about an issue that's important to our company. And so this year, this panel was created with that intention. In May of last year, we took our anger and our pain and we sprung into action. We started speaking to these 8 panelists here, bringing together all of the 1,000 pieces that it takes to do this. A huge shout out to our marketing team, our PR team, coordinating travel. All of it is not easy. And being able to build a guided discussion is not easy. So there's a lot of people in this room that made this happen. And thank you to each and every one of you. Turning to our panelists, I'm just going to introduce them one by one. All of them have bios. All of them have bios. All of them have bios that could be 2 or 3 pages. I've tried to shorten them as much as I can. Sorry about that.
Could you speak louder and closer to the microphone?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Great. So Antonio Romanucci, Tony is the co-founder of Romanucci & Blandon LLC, a national impact litigation firm. He leads a team of mass shooting attorneys representing those harmed or killed in Highland Park, Illinois, 4th of July parade, Robb Elementary School shooting in Uvalde, Club Q LGBTQ nightclub shooting in Colorado Springs, and many others. Thank you for being here. Incredible attorney from Western New York. He's the founder of Connors LLP. He currently represents families of victims of Tops mass shooting. I was ranked by super lawyers as the All right, how about that, guys?
You gotta stand away from all their mics.
Hi, guys.
Much better.
All right, I'm just going to ditch the mic. Hey, guys, Tony's the best. He's representing people in about a dozen mass shootings across the country, including Uvalde, Club Q, Highland Park, all these really important issues. Terry, who's right next to Tony, I've known Terry most of my life. He's probably the best litigator in Buffalo and Western New York generally. He's been voted the best lawyer in upstate New York for 7 straight years. Josh has been fighting this issue for more than a decade. You probably know him for his work on Sandy Hook, as well as working against Alex Jones. He's currently working on the Las Vegas shootings, among many others. He's often the person that all these people call when they have an issue with gun manufacturers. Next to him is John Elmore. John has been litigating cases for 35 years. He's the founder of John V. Elmore Law Firm. Honestly, he is an important piece of Buffalo. He's an important piece of our black community. He is someone that everyone in Buffalo knows. If you were from Western New York, you obviously know John. He's representing families of the victims in the Buffalo Tops mass shooting, as well as terror. So, Fu, I can say a lot of things about Fu Zimmerman. What I love most about her is she speaks truth, even when speaking truth is really, really hard. She is probably one of the biggest forces in mass torts today. And if you guys don't know Fu, I'd strongly recommend to shake her hand because you'll be better for it. Thank you. Ala Lefkowitz is the managing director of affirmative litigation at Everytown. Everytown is an incredible group. There's a fundraiser actually happening on the tables if you want to do a donation to them today. Everytown helps keep us safe. They pass legislation across the United States. They have a team of 250 people working every day. Thank you for being here, Al. Adam Skaggs, you can't, he's been litigating these types of cases for a very long time. He is the head of, sorry, title is tough right now. Head of litigation for Giffords. He's the head of litigation for Giffords, Gabby Giffords' organization. They do a ton of good. They fight a ton on these cases. He used to be the head of litigation at Everytown before he transitioned over to Giffords. There also has flyers of their organization on your tables today. They do incredible and important work around these issues. Adam, thank you for being here. And last but certainly not least is Ben Crump. Ben is a civil rights attorney, activist, and leader in our country today. I mean, he is probably the face of the civil rights movement in the United States today. Thank you so much for being here, Ben. It means the world. So, history's happening in the moment. Tony today is flying to DC in probably about 20 minutes in order to try to get a bill passed. So I'm going to let him start the discussion, but my question is, what is the context we're working in? What's happening right now? Could you give us a little bit of history and kind of what's going on at this moment today?
May I stand?
Yes, you may.
If you don't mind.
You may, counsel.
Thank you. May it please the court, may it please Fu. So thank you, everybody, and I'm so honored to be on this panel with all of you and just seeing the participation here today because this is such an important issue. I want to start off, and I have much less than 20 minutes, by the way. I only have maybe less than 10 minutes, and then I do have to be on the way to the airport. I'll be with my brother Ben tomorrow in D.C. on hopefully reviving the George Floyd police reform bill. And so I'm going to continue the discussion that I was having a little bit earlier in the police misconduct litigation group. I was fired up. I came in, I like to call myself, I came in hot, and that's because I am hot. We had this discussion about violence. We're here to talk about gun violence. Well, gun violence happens in many forms, does it not? It happens in mass shootings, it happens in schools, it happens in supermarkets, it happens in clubs, it happens all over the place. But there are also single event shootings that are still destroying this country. And so I cannot stand the fact that we are still here begging for change when we have to say another name. Say his name, and we keep saying a name. And so the discussion in the police misconduct litigation group was that this organization, these members and these litigation groups have the power to make change. Let's not wait until our next spring board meeting. Let's not wait until the summer to make a change and make a difference.
We gotta figure this shit out, like now, because we don't have a lot of time. And here's why. So I still collect the daily newspaper on my doorstep every day. And when I was flying out here to Phoenix yesterday reading the newspaper, my favorite section is the op-ed section. I love reading op-eds. This is the shortest op-ed that I'll ever read to you, that you'll ever read. And it's titled, 5-Year-Old's Thoughts. My grandson, who is 5 years old, asked if he is excited about going to kindergarten. No, he replied. I don't want to get shot. Okay. So what have we done in this country by not creating change? Well, anytime I meet anybody who's a school teacher, I'm beyond grateful to them, because now they are our new anointed. They're our first line of defense to our children. Our school teachers are the first line of defense for our school children, because we have a subliminal war going on in this country because of the gun proliferation that we have. And it was being discussed in the gun litigation group that I stepped into for a little while. But us right here, this room, we're the tobacco lawyers, we're the asbestos lawyers, we're the Ford Pinto lawyers. We are the ones that will take this issue on and make the difference. And so we have to do it, and we cannot wait for it. So I don't really have too much else to say, because I know that I'm running thin on time, and these panelists will pick up the ball and run with it and give you all the answers that they want. But we have an opportunity with the civil litigation. Obviously, Josh was beyond successful in Sandy Hook with that precedent-setting result that happened there. And now because that's what we do, we learn from each other, we're taking that playbook now and seeing, can we apply it to Highland Park? Can it be applied to Uvalde? Can it be applied to, Buffalo? It depends on all your specific issues. But there's something out there that we can now use as a precedent. But we have to do it. We have to do it. And I'm grateful to those who are on this panel and to you in this room, because that's what we have to do. We have to assume the risk in order to reap the reward of saving our children and stopping the war that we have going on in this country. So Sam was kind enough to literally give me stage right. The first thing on stage right, so I try not to fall downstairs, because I do tend to do that, and I'll try and exit gracefully. Thank you, everybody.
Up a really good point, that working on a mass shooting or a shooting case is a little bit different than doing a slip and fall or a car accident. So I would just kind of open this up to the panel. What is inherently different about trying a mass a mass shooting case versus a typical standard personal injury case? Anyone who does both want to sort of jump in on that?
Sure, I mean, I'm a mass tort lawyer, but also did gun cases, and I'd like to rewind to what Tony said. Tony is, for those of you who don't know him, an amazing trial lawyer, but more importantly, is a believer. And I think his message is, if we really are plaintiff lawyers, what are we going to do to fight for our lives? And I want to start there, because I'm lucky enough to practice in the case with Terry and Ben and Chris. And I left my children to go to the funerals. We went to 4. We represent 7 of the families killed in the Buffalo mass shooting, and obviously I'm black. That was a really hard, and you were there a couple of days, because let's be clear, we are at war. Make no mistake about it. Our experts tell us white supremacy is not one person calling me the N-word. It is a movement, and it is facilitated by companies, people online, and renegade law enforcement. We are at war. And on our way to that church, Ben had one of many death threats, and we talked about it. And we sat there with a black AG of New York, a black mayor of New York City, a black Buffalo in New York City, and I think we all wondered if walking into that church, we would be a victim. That 2023, it feels like what I read about as a child in 1964, that then has FBI warnings. So we say, I mean, we're going to talk about the claims and the defenses, and there are brilliant people here, and we are going to war against the gun manufacturers and the social media companies. Make no mistake about it. My children are 14 and 8, and about 7 years ago we had a warning up the street because the jail's down the street, and they had to lock down my child's school. And my family is from the third world. I'm first generation. My family is Haitian and Cuban. When my family left Haiti, they left Haiti to avoid war and to not worry about someone opening fire on me or my siblings, and that's what we face today. So I just wanted to make those comments, and I'm going to shut it up in a minute to say I think we all feel like what we're doing is the cusp of a new litigation. We're going to tag all their asses, all of them. So go ahead.
To what Fu said, because as Terry, her, and I often said to the press,
was even though that young white supremacist killed those 10 black people in that Buffalo Top supermarket, John and everybody, it was white supremacist cable talk show hosts, it was white supremacist online chat groups, it was websites that allow white supremacist ideology to be proliferated, and they loaded that gun for that young white supremacist who came 3 hours away. And we have to understand, in many of these cases, as Fu said brilliantly, the motivation is white supremacy, whether it's the Jewish synagogues, whether it's the Hispanic shootings in Uvalde, in different places, you have this mentality that they feel we gotta take these people out. And we have to remember all these mass shootings, if we can tie that to it, I think we have a better chance of winning in the court of public opinion to help us against these gun manufacturers and their defenses.
Ben, you bring up a really good point, and that's how does the social media sort of...
Let me just give a lot of credit to what I'm saying to Matthew Bergman. Can you stand up, Matthew? Matthew is a good of mine who was part of our team along with Josh, along with the Giffords Foundation in Buffalo. And when I received, I'm an employer in Buffalo. I represent 3 of the families. And the first thing that I needed to do was to reach out and get a good quality team. I mean, I'm a personal injury lawyer, but I know that this was way, way bigger than me. So when you talk about social media, first of all, let me just talk about media in general, how it affects. Go all the way back to 1915. This is Black History Month. 1915, there was a movie. It's called Birth of a Nation. Played in Woodrow Wilson's, the president in the White House. And that was that started the rebirth of the Ku Klux Klan. It started a movement of just lynching and violence against African Americans all over the country because of what they saw. Okay? A little bit about my background. If you read about mass shootings, the first mass shooting ever in a school was in my high school, my senior year. Look at Wikipedia, only in New York, sniper shooting. The sniper in there was a classmate of mine by the name of Anthony Barbaro. And when the time he was doing the shooting, he was playing a cassette, and the song was by Elton John, and the song was called Ticking, Ticking, Ticking. And that's a song about a disturbed youth that went in and shot up people in a bar. Now think about in the 70s, this was 1974, how you just play the same song over and over and over. And when you're a teenager, your brain is still in a very formative years. And that's where this kid got the idea to do the first high school shooting in America. 1974, my senior year, so I take this personal. I take it real personal because responding to the sniper shooting at my high school was a firefighter who was my father, who was driving there, and my father was a real tough guy, okay? If he ran into Shannon Sharp wouldn't want his smoke, okay? But my father was shot in the head when he responded to that thing. And for probably 3 hours, he was clinging to the head to stop to his breathing, where bullet fragments were into his brain. And finally, a tank came to the scene to protect the firefighters that were under fire by this sniper, who was my classmate who lived 2 blocks from me, was just I think third in our class, a kind of a misfit. But for the rest of his life, he was crippled from the left side all the way down. So this is personal to me. And then what happened in Buffalo, when I see how the social media platforms are designed in a way where the algorithms direct you to this most dangerous stuff, okay? And they understand that there's psychological studies that want to keep you addicted to the social media, because the social media platforms make more money the longer that you're on them. I learned from Matthew that the social media platforms, and from his other litigation, knew that they were going to live stream mass shootings, that they're designed because they know the dopamine, the more violent stuff that you have, the more shock that you get through your body, the more pleasure that you get. And when it came to Gendron, he was radicalized by social media. He learned how to use the body armor from social media. He learned how to change his gun, his AR-15, to be a high-capacity weapon with the magazine through social media. He watched the live stream of the shootings in New Zealand and Dylan Roof and these manifestos and all of that he got from social media. He realized that the AR-15 would be the most effective weapon through social media, that trained him to do that. And normally you cannot sue a social media platform because of content, but what we're learning is the way that these platforms have been designed, that we can go after these social media platforms because of the way that they're designed, because they knew that it was going to be dangerous, just the way that you can go after a drug company for manufacturing a product that kills people, or an automobile company for designing a car that's defective design, and that's what we're planning on doing. And I can tell you that this litigation is probably some of the most important litigation in America, because right now there are people that are being radicalized to commit violent acts against African Americans, against Jews, against gays and lesbians, because they're being radicalized. Fundamentalist Muslims are becoming radicalized to commit terrorist acts against America. I believe that a lot of people that were radicalized to attack the Capitol were radicalized on social media. It's like our bodies. What we eat depends on the way our body's shaped, and what we feed into our brains determines the health of our brains. And so this media that we're all involved in is very, very important. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing. So the social media is one aspect of it, but there's also the whole public nuisance aspect of it. Josh, could you talk a little bit, are you working on that, the Las Vegas and how that sort of ties in?
Well, the Las Vegas case was a trial case. That was a case involving the Las Vegas shooting, which is the largest mass shooting in American history. We had one family is brave enough to take on 8 gun manufacturers. And the lawsuit, I mean, it was a pretty creative lawsuit, but it was that we were saying that the gun manufacturers violated the National Firearms Act and the Gun Control Act of 1986 because when you equip a AR-15 with a bump stock, it functions like an automatic rifle, and automatic fire has been outlawed since 1934 effectively in this country. So basically, the substance of that law also applies to weapons that could be easily modified to create automatic fire. So you can't just say, hey, the AR-15 is a semi-automatic rifle, when you have a single doodad that can attach in less than a minute, that can replicate automatic fire. That was our argument in Vegas. We did win with the federal court, which basically said, hey, I think that this should go to a jury. The problem is in Nevada, they have a law that basically says you can't sue a firearms company because the gun, simply because the gun operated as designed. And we said, that's fine, but we're suing them because they broke the law in selling an automatic rifle. That didn't go over well with the Nevada Supreme Court. That is a very political court. They're probably listening to me right now. They, imagine a court saying in Nevada that AR-15s are machine guns and are effectively against law. We argued, okay, yeah, that's true by the letter of the law, and it's just like marijuana, it's still federally outlawed, but that doesn't mean people are getting prosecuted for it. But in that case in particular, because those 8, there was a total of 12 weapons, they were all equipped with bump stock, and that's how all the people died. And this brings me to one important point if you're thinking about, God forbid you should be in a community that has one of these like we all have been, Connecticut, Buffalo, Parkland, wherever. You have to be really careful about the claims you bring. And I think you just have to play it straight, like you're all trial lawyers, good lawyers. You have a difficult factual situation. Put aside that it's a gun for a minute. Just look at what happened and say to yourself, how could it have been prevented? And how did it happen? So especially in this area where there's all these, we all have feelings about guns, and there's some great arguments against the gun industry, but guess what? They don't always work with every case. So in Vegas we had that theory because it fit, because the weapons were transformed. But I wouldn't have filed that same claim and did it in Connecticut. Their own filings before the SEC, which we discovered beforehand, they bragged about their success with the younger demographic, how much money they were making, and what a bright future it had. And when I saw that, I thought, just get me to a jury, let me read this in front of a Connecticut jury, them extolling the virtues of this weapon in the aftermath of Sandy Hook, among many others, but it seems like it's mostly been. Just busted the child's but with what we do, we still have targets on our backs. The gun industry wants to be able to say trial lawyers are coming after their guns. They want to be able to say we are trying to do what government can't do, and that is ban their weapons. So if we get out there on our soapboxes, and if we say and this is a different war I'm talking about, we don't want to say we're at war with the gun industry, because that will allow them, guess what they do? They take our public statements, I see them, they put them in their motions to the judge, and they say, see judge, this isn't really about the gun, what we did wrong in this case. This isn't really about us contributing to this terrible event. This is because these liberal trial lawyers want to take away our guns. This is them trying to do what the legislature won't do, violate our Second Amendment. So you have to play very close to the vest on these issues.
I want to tackle the public nuisance issue with Terry, and I'm going to bring it back to talk about.
Yeah, a number of years ago, before the top shooting, we took on a case on behalf of a high school student who was an aspiring Division I basketball player with aspirations to become a professional basketball player. Ala, when she was with the Brady Center, worked with our firm on this case. He was standing outside his home shooting baskets in front of his own house when a gang member drove by and mistook him for a gang member, shot him, the bullet went through his abdomen, exited from his back. Luckily he survived, but that was the end of his basketball career. We took on that case and we thought a lot about the theories of the case. And as Josh said, it's really important that you do that. And what we did was we constructed a theory that would get through an exemption of PLCA, but we also put in a common law nuisance theory. And we thought that we could show that that gun came in with a stream of guns into our community. 108 of them came in from straw purchasers. We tracked them all with the help of the ATF. We built the case, and we did very well with the case, but the key was that after we finished, the common law nuisance was sustained on appeal. They took us up to appeal. They took us into federal court. We got $50,000 of sanctions against the gun industry. Finally, 2 years after our case was precedent in the Western District of New York State passed a public nuisance statute. And we're going to use that in this case. That's what we do. There's no other profession that does this as well as we do. We shine a spotlight on misconduct. We've done it over the ages, and we're going to do it in this case too.
Impacting the litigation and the advocacy work. Like Ben, Adam, Ala, can you kind of talk on how do we get people involved, how do we actually move forward these policy goals, and how do we work alongside litigation to make that happen?
I'll say this, I listen keenly to what Josh and Terry were just saying, and you have to remember, it's never going to be easy when you're trying to achieve justice. It's always going to be a struggle. And we have to remember, without struggle, there can be no progress. I literally, Josh, was thinking, just because they say you can't do it and you're going to lose, we should never shy away from stuff because of those reasons. I know we fought for this black woman against Harvard University, against a 150-year statute of limitations. Everybody said we were crazy, arguably. But guess what? Crazy people make precedent because we won in the Massachusetts Supreme Court. And what it tells me is, you know, when you think about criminal cases, to get a first-degree murder conviction, you have to have malice or forethought. If we remember nothing else from this panel, what we should all take away is justice or forethought. And we should fight like hell with everything we got to try everything we can throw it against the board. And we gotta use whatever intellect that we don't even know we have to try to avoid another mass shooting like the ones we saw in Orlando against the gay community in Colorado, Buffalo and Dillon Roof in South Carolina against the black community, New York with the Jewish synagogue, Atlanta with the Asian spa. I mean, we gotta try to use the emotion because like they taught us in trial law, the only way to get people to act is you got to evoke emotion. And I think that's what Terry and Josh were so successful at with getting the law changed in New York and winning that landmark case in Connecticut. And so I know what Boo and all of us do every day, we go and we take on the windmills. You know, we go attack them every day. And Devin, we've done them. And I always remember what my grandmother said in the back of my mind. She said, baby, you don't do a thing for the result of it. You do a thing because it's the right thing to do. So let's all take a commitment to say, we're gonna do the right thing no matter how crazy or how hard they tell us it is. Do the right thing.
If I could pick up on that, you know, doing the crazy thing makes precedent. Doing the crazy thing is what you got to do to try and have some success. I think the Sandy Hook case is a perfect example of that because Josh and Eleanor were working on the idea for the case, and I, among many others, told them they were crazy, and they that's their own case.
He is crazy a little bit.
So I can attest that's an actual case of that. But I want to pick up on what Terry was talking about, this new public nuisance law that New York has passed. And I point out that we're talking about litigation here. These are all litigators on the stage, but the title of this panel is Mass Shootings, a Legal Path Forward. It's not a litigation path forward, it's a legal path forward. And part of the legal path forward, and part of what groups like Everytown and Giffords do, is passing the legislation that enables these kinds of new cases to go forward. So you go back a generation, you had a series of cases filed against the gun industry, some of them, public nuisance theories, negligent marketing theories, a range of theories. Some of them failed, some of them started to succeed, and the gun industry took notice, and the gun industry passed PACA, and they passed equivalent state laws for PACA in the vast majority of states. So there's this legislation and litigation interplay. Well, here we are today with this incredible crisis that's only accelerated. The gun industry has only become more irresponsible after PACA because, like the social media companies that enjoy their immunity, there's no incentive to self-police in any way because the civil justice system is closed to try and bring accountability to these companies. So what are we doing? Well, we're passing laws like we passed in New York, the public nuisance law. We passed laws like that in New Jersey, Delaware, and California. California is going to open up the courthouse doors to litigation beginning on July 1st, later this year. We see bills introduced in a number of states around the country. So we're trying to use all of the legal tools at our disposal to pass the policy that opens back up the civil justice system to hold these companies accountable. And it's incredible work that everyone on the stage is doing, and we're very proud to be able to do that with them.
What is some of that work?
Sure, yeah. One thing I want to take a step back and give a little more detail on the role that PLACA plays in holding the gun industry.
Can you give some background on it too?
Yeah, absolutely. So PLACA, the Protection of Lawful Commerce and Arms Act, is a federal law that was passed in 2005. So the number one impact of it, I would say, is exactly what Adam was just alluding to. We've had 18 years of the gun industry thinking that they could get away with whatever they want, right? I mean, it's no surprise to anyone who have that kind of civil immunity. Having litigated these cases for 9 years, I'm telling you, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit out there of gun companies acting really, really badly. But it also is like on the other hand, it's really important to know that there are exceptions to PLACA, and they are being utilized. I mean, Josh's case is the most famous and incredibly successful version of the holding a gun manufacturer accountable under PLACA. One thing I want to keep in mind, to just like getting kind of into the details a little bit, there's two main exceptions under PLACA. One is if you're suing a gun seller like Walmart or Cabela's or Dick's or whatever, you can sue them for something called negligent entrustment, right? Giving a gun to someone that they shouldn't have. With regard to gun manufacturers, you can sue them for knowingly violating the law. So that may be a portion of the Gun Control Act, or that may be a state Consumer Protection Act like what Josh did in Connecticut, like what we're working on right now in Highland Park and Uvalde. These cases are going on all around the country, and I know that Adam and Giffords Group and us with Everytown, one of the things that we are able to do, we have the kind of, all we do is think about these cases. That is literally our only job. So we try to partner with trial attorneys and provide any kind of like the technical subject matter expertise on this to get past the motion to dismiss, to get through discovery. And I think it's been working really well so far. And I do think that these public nuisance statutes, which by the way, the reason these public nuisance statutes are such a big deal, what PLACA says is that to hold a gun manufacturer or any member of the gun industry accountable, the defendant has to knowingly violate a law applicable to the sale and marketing of firearms, right? So there's a lot of public nuisance statutes out there that I'm sure you're all aware of that aren't directly applicable to the sale and marketing of firearms. So what New York, New Jersey, Delaware, California have done is said, fine, we're going to take our public nuisance law And we're just gonna say it is applicable to the sale and marketing of firearms, which really does open up a whole new, world in this kind of litigation.
Sam, if I may, and we're talking about claims, and I heard a lot, and thank you, about the social media claims. I'm one of the people who serves in leadership in the social MDL, MDL out of DC, and that's about what these companies have done, built these apps to essentially create an Alice in Wonderland situation. You live it with your children and your spouses, where your face is constantly in this device. This is part of a new frontier, I think, in the gun cases as to our ability to hold online folks responsible. And the reason for that is the CDA, which is, you all may be familiar with the CDA, but it essentially protects online hosts. And when the internet first came about, the sense was, well, you're just putting stuff on somebody's website. Why would that website host be responsible for the conduct and the content? Because there's a free speech component to this on the site. The problem with that is the internet has a life of its own, and these apps have a life of their own. And so, and both of us are on it, and stand up again, because he's in leadership in it as well. But I say that, and really does an excellent job, but I say that to say that to what John did, being on the cusp of legal issues means that we have to work together. And so what was done by leadership in our firms in the social media MDL is the app itself is the product. If the content is challenged, we face losing on the CD. And we believe that that product, the way it is designed and created to make you addicted to tomatoes or shoes or bras or killing people, it has, if you don't know, I suggest you watch Dopamine Labs, which talks about the creation of the apps, the men and women who studied how our brains work, and it actually mimics the response you get to gambling, right? And so it is a dangerous new frontier trying to hold them liable, and I don't think we 100% have the theory in place, but we're working actively on it. So if you have one of those cases, the folks up here are brilliant, but call the firms to talk through how to plead and protect the future of these cases, both in and out of the shooting context. And I just really wanted to say these claims are quite involved. And we all have made bad law for one another, so let's stop. Pick up the phone and talk to people who are in it so we can brainstorm
Why
together.
don't you tell them a little bit about, specifically, John, you too, on Buffalo out. I mean, this guy was motivated by what he was getting off the internet, and we know because he put it in his manifesto and how he found Buffalo and how he searched. If you and John could talk about that, I don't mean to take over, but I just think it's so important that these young people are being radicalized, and that's the most dangerous thing, because it's not just the cable news people talking about racial replacement theory. You got to go do something to stop this, and it's the website, and how many people knew that he was going to do it. He was broadcasting it, and the host let them go ahead. So,
No, I agree. I'd like to say one other thing too. Everybody here is a trial lawyer, and if you're a good trial lawyer, you got a big ego, right?
That's not true. That's a lie.
But when you get one of these cases, you got to put the ego aside. I mean, it's about teamwork. I mean, I knew this was bigger than me, and the first thing I did was call Josh. I sent him a message to his website, and he called me the next day. And then, he called me and said, well, Adam Skaggs from the Giffords firm might be a good addition. And, a lot of times we're the Lone Ranger, and then once we realized, well, there's some social media issues here, we needed to bring in somebody else to the team. And then there are lawyers that are representing other people. I mean, in Buffalo, I got a big ego because I'm the black lawyer in town, and then all of a sudden, here comes Ben Crump and Al Sharpton. And
John, you're a great black lawyer. So Buffalo and all across America.
Here comes him, and people that would that normally come to me are going to him, but it doesn't matter because it's bigger than me, it's bigger than my ego, it's bigger than his ego, and we just want to make our system and our country a safer. I mean, these people that got killed, I mean, that's a supermarket that I attended, that's a street where every year I pay for a block party, and people in the neighborhood, played for basketball teams and football teams that I sponsor. But the thing is, you just have to put the ego aside and say, okay, there's a big monster out there that we have to fight, and we're all, whoever we're representing, whatever organization, there's a Zoom meeting, there's planning, and there's cooperation. And so for all of you, I mean, if this, hopefully it'll never hit your town. But if it does, don't be afraid to say, I need help, and reach out to the people that know and understand and have been there before.
Thank you. If you're more of a localized attorney, how do you handle taking in that mass shooting case because you really, really want to do it, you know it's good for your community, and handle it with all your other cases? Like Terry, could you kind of comment on that? Or Josh, I know you carry a whole bunch of other types of cases.
Well, Sam, I'll tell you the answer to that question. All you have to do is meet for 1 minute with the families who lost loved ones. Mm-hmm. All you have to do is look into their eyes and see how great that loss is. That they send their elderly mother out to the supermarket to buy strawberries for the shortcake for the birthday. Or that they were a security officer armed with a 9mm weapon against an AR-15, a Canisius College graduate in my school who fought him to the death. Speak to his wife that survived. That's all it takes. And you know you're in. It doesn't matter how much work it's going to take. It doesn't matter what you have to learn or what you have to do. We were born to do this kind of work, and this is the work we'll do. So for me,
to pick up on what Terry is saying, what cases are more important than these cases? And I'll pause there and say there are cases just as important as these cases that don't involve mass shootings, but that involve people killed with guns in the day-to-day gun violence that doesn't get the kind of publicity that these horrific mass shootings do. There are gun suicides. We're working with a family whose son was an employee of a store, a 16-year-old kid, telling his co-workers at this gun store that he was intent on doing self-harm, that he was going to kill himself, and he was given unfettered, unsupervised access to the gun storage vault in the store, and he took a gun out of there and took it home and killed himself. Those stories are just as tragic as mass shootings, and they're just as important and worthy of all of our attention. And as Ala was saying before, so we're mission-driven organizations, and when cases like this come up, and victims or families of people who have been killed come to us and say, help us, that's what we're here for, that's what we're going to do. And we're going to partner with some of the lawyers, like the great lawyers on stage here, and hopefully some of you in the room here. When these cases happen in your community, come to organizations like Ala's and mine, and we have some expertise, we have some experience, you have tools, you have relationships in communities. There are incredible partnerships that can happen here, and hopefully in the specific context of the Tops shooting in Buffalo, some of the folks on this stage will come up with some incredible results. But that's how it works. These organizations have been established. We're here in Arizona. My organization is led by former Congresswoman Gabby Giffords, who was the victim of a survivor of gun violence herself, not here in Phoenix, but in Tucson. So this hits very close to home, and it's great to talk with you all here in Phoenix. But I would just say, when these cases come across your radar, look the people in the eye, like Terry says, and take the cases and come to us to partner, to work for technical assistance, however we can help. But that's kind of the model, and again, it's great to talk to a bunch of trial lawyers, egos aside, because these are the kind of partnerships that are gonna make a difference.
And so
And you have to put egos aside, y'all. I tell you, I always never want to go into somebody's backyard without having one of the most brilliant lawyers from that city or town working with us. And I know Terry and I had worked on talc and so forth, and so when Buffalo came, that's, you know, immediately I said, he's a great lawyer, let's talk to him. But all around the country, y'all, we have to remember that it's always going to be a team that is more effective than an individual. Fu and I talk about those things a lot. Strategy, who's the best person for this? You have to understand your strengths and weaknesses, and you say, hey, let me exalt my strengths and let me make up for my weaknesses by partnering with my brothers and sisters in the trial bar. And I'd be happy, and I tell Fu this all the time, I'm happy to carry her bags in the courtroom. Because there are times you gotta know, and you know, if this ain't my field, let me let them lead and let me support. Let me be a good cheerleader. And glory finds us all. It will find us all if we try first to do the right thing. And you try, again, I go back to my grandmother, try for disaster, treat those imposters just the same. It is never about the result. It's about us trying to do the right thing every day so we can look at our children and say, Daddy did the best he could to give you a better world.
And so if I may on tips, I think that preserve, and dig. You know, who are the defendants? To John's point, all of these cases are totally different. And one of the reasons, and I'm a preservation psychopath anyway, where are the witnesses and what is the gun and what is the body armor and what devices were used and what websites were they on and what do those websites look like and how do those apps work? I mean, you gotta do a super deep dig on the case. Also, I will say this, 15 years ago, although I'm 20, I had my first defective firearm case. David Selby and I became very good friends, for those of you who know David Selby, and let me be clear, they are the nastiest lawyers I have ever dealt with on the other side. Let me, and understand what I do for a living. I'm a mass tort lawyer. I fight Kirkland Ellis and Paraquat and all kinds of cases. I'm not like, you know, I'm not like doing a yoga class for a living. I deal with hostile, lying defense lawyers all the time. They are the worst. And at that time, I was in my first partnership with and I was really young and hiding discovery, very aggressive. There's one, should we say his name? I'm gonna say his damn name.
Brandon, cut the clip.
But when Terry and I became friends in Buffalo mass shooting, I told him this story about this defense lawyer and the way they lied. A lot of former military, technically, they know guns. So if you think you're going to fight with them, be smarter than them. These guys, mostly guys who do this work, are quite dangerous. And then I told him the story of how he almost had a physical fight in that case. And Terry was like, I know that guy. So I say that all to say, of all the cases, you really need to know this case. You know him, and you got to find the witnesses. You got to know what happened. And that's our challenge in the case. We dug deep. Jen was on 8chan, 4chan, both of those are on operation, a number of websites, streaming on Facebook, and that's also part of having a team because that is a very specific expertise. My law partner, Mark Abramowitz, is like the king of ESI. I'm not the queen of it, right? So I think building that team is necessary, and he and some others went on a super deep dive to figure out where was this kid doing, what was he doing, how was he accessing, what apps was he using, and how was he using the apps? Because for that set of claims, all of those questions are very, very important.
Just one, I mean, this I think might be getting a little into the minutia, but we're talking about tips. Most gun cases are litigated in state court, not in federal court, even though the defendants will try to get them into federal court every single time. You know, so one thing that I would particularly advise, you know, is, you know, if you are considering taking on one of these cases, going on Westlaw, like or Lexis may not actually be the most like helpful thing in the world, and calling one of the folks on this panel who have been dealing with these like state trial court cases all around the country is something that you really want to do, because even though it might not be something that you find on Westlaw or Lexis, like they've probably, either Giffers or Terry or Josh or me or something, we've probably dealt with a situation like this and can still point you to the right direction.
One of the unusual aspects of the gender case is that the federal government is seeking the death penalty. He's pled guilty in state court, and he's going to receive life without parole on February 15th. The federal government has over 4 terabytes of information, which would be very useful to our case, particularly that they seized his computer, they had subpoenas of all the social media platforms and a lot of the stuff that would really help our civil case. We've asked for it. Unfortunately, the feds have gotten a protective order, which only allows us to go to the Federal Public Defender's Office and look at their computers to try to review and memorize this 4 terabytes of information. We're not allowed to record anything. We're not allowed to take notes, and it's impossible. And sometimes your enemies can be your friends. But what's unusual about this case is that the defense attorneys, all they care about in a death penalty case is to save their client's life, period. That's a win for them. And so part of their strategy is to get the clients that we represent to really want to spare his life. And so they're want to be as helpful to us as they can be. I mean, they want to give us all the discovery. They'll tell the federal court judge, no, let the plaintiff's lawyers have whatever they want. And so it's just an unusual quagmire that we have in these type of cases where the federal government, who's supposed to be our friend, and they claim that they're going to do everything that they can do for the victims, but it seems to me that they're more interested in killing this guy than helping us with our civil lawsuit.
Yeah, it's not like their claim is difficult.
I know Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee and Senator Warnock are contemplating putting forth new hate crime bills in this Congress, and they're talking about using this Ruth Witherspoon, the oldest lady who was killed in the top supermarket, and try to put a face on it. And I think that hate crime law can also help with the laws we're trying to talk about with gun reform as well. So we have to keep we just have to have our minds wide open to every possibility. And just like you all, I like everybody, that you pray it doesn't come to your community, that you got to be willing to get with all of us and figure out what strengths we bring to different situations to try to get victory in not just for our clients, but really changing the law and getting prohibitions of so many guns being put in everybody's hand. I mean, how many more guns do we need in America? I mean, it's mind-boggling. Since we got the Ukraine war, that movie, Lord of War, has become more popular. And y'all remember the first lines of that movie. He said that 1 out of every 10 people in the world, we have the stand your ground law that, was used in Trayvon Martin. This black kid walking home with a cell phone with killers and iced tea. That law literally said, we don't want you to try to de-escalate. Just pick up a gun and shoot the person, and certainly if it's a person of color, you're gonna be fine. So they would go home and do your business like, as long as you say, I felt the fear of my life. And what the case with Austin Fool and Terry and John, y'all in New York, y'all remember the Bernard Getz case? When they literally said, the New York Supreme Court said, you can consider race as a factor in your self-defense argument. So what did that tell all us black people? That they could kill our children and go home and sleep in their beds at night, just like Trayvon killers did. And so we gotta fight against this notion that we solve our problem with violence and start teaching our children. No, you solve your problem with diplomacy.
By a 6-year-old child. Did you all see this? Yeah. I mean, as we headed here, I mean, that's a 6-year-old child for the teacher. Her life's over and that child's life is over. I mean, it's just stunning.
Well, Ben, you talk about, imagine a world in which every person has a gun and we settle our problem with violence, not diplomacy. We don't have to imagine that world because in this country there's more guns than people. There's more guns than everybody could have one and there's more to go around. But it doesn't take that much imagination.
So we're coming towards the end of our panel. I'm going to give every panelist 1 or 2 minutes to sort of talk about one big takeaway you want everyone to have, and then we're going to open it up to questions. So if anyone has any questions, we'll be able to ask them in the panel. And then we'll have happy hour and hopefully talk about ways to change things. But Terry,
I want to give a big round of applause to our moderator.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the most important part of this litigation experience is that it really gives you an opportunity to do what we swore to do when we were brought in as lawyers in our states. And for me, the importance of it is, I was involved in Flight 3407 cases. And I met several families there that I'm still in close contact with. In fact, some of those families are going to meet with the families in the Thomas Market shooting to talk about grief and to talk about loss and advocacy as well. But to me, when I think about those two worlds coming together, people that they went on a business trip, they went out to a store, and they came back, and they never saw their loved one again. They never had a chance to grieve. They never had a preparation for it. And then I think to myself, okay, you took an oath of office to do something about it. And there is really something we can do about this. This is not a situation where we are just waving in the wind. We can make really distinct changes. The people on this panel are committed to do that. And if you get a chance, and I hope you never do, to work on these types of cases, to me, and John and I were talking about this morning, this is historic for Western New York community. And when it comes to your community, the effect that it has on you as a lawyer and as a person is so huge, it's so large. It's changed my life. It's changed the way I approach things. It's changed the way I approach litigation. And I'm going to be happy to see it through to the end because we're going to make some real difference.
Who knows this, but actually Terry gave the commencement speech when I graduated law school. So he had those words that inspired me to actually get this all together. So special thanks to Terry.
Yeah, I'm just going to add my thanks to you, Sam, and to the panel, and to everybody for sticking through this. It's a sober topic, and I hope you got some inspiration out of it. I'll turn it over to my wonderful friend, John.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. I just wanted to say that I guess, God puts us on this earth for a purpose. I've had experience in 1974 with a sniper from high school. And maybe the lessons that I learned can be of use in this case. And we just want to make America safer from gun violence, safer from white supremacy. I want to thank our sponsors for allowing me to be here, for bringing this great panel together, and for each and every single one of the lawyers that 7 days a week since the top shooting, but it's worthwhile.
Well, first, I'm going to do something most necessary. I'm going to plug Sam at Milestone. If you really like Sam, use him. He has a great company, great supporters, great, just absolutely wonderful. And thank you for doing this. And I'm very sorry for your loss and everyone in Buffalo and from Buffalo. One of my law partners who grew up in Buffalo, Ken, you've gotten to know. And so a lot of respect for that community, for sticking together and being positive. And I think one day I woke up at my hotel and there was like a billboard that was like uplifting. And I just want to say about the Buffalo community, how exceptional they've been pulling together and not letting hate fill their hearts, because that's very difficult. I guess my parting words is I'm a product lawyer because people's lives matter. Defective gun, drugs, all of it, you know, we matter. But what I tell our young lawyers that reminds me is what we're doing, we're never going to see. You know, what we're fighting for is what people did fighting Plessy, that Brown versus Board of Ed, women's rights, abortion rights. We fought these demons in the past. Now they're massive gun distributors putting it in the hands of children. And so I think that's our task, to build the precedents, to do the challenging cases, to work together to think of the theories that lay the foundation for what our ultimate goal is to remove guns from the hands of dangerous people, and to make people believe that your life must include gunning people down or preserving your race. It's a cancer, and I'm honored to work with all these lawyers and all of you. So my words leading are everyone's ideas are important, because this is cutting edge stuff, so get involved and bring your thoughts and your theories. And that includes right courts. We haven't talked about that, but in my almost 20 years, these courts have changed, and I think decisions about where you file and how you file, to the extent that you have jurisdictional choices, which is obviously defendant and plaintiff driven, are key strategies as we file these different types of cases across the country. So thank you all for being here. Thank you, Steve.
Topic. I mean, part of the idea of this, we have 8 amazing minds on the stage. Your guys' teams are incredible, but looking out, there's more than 100 people here, right? You guys are all great at trainers yourselves. So if you want to tackle these issues and think through the problems that are currently our country is facing, let's do it. Let's do it together, right? Because that's how we're going to come up with the best leaders.
My final word. No, I was just going to say, this is my first AHA conference, and my first time meeting you, Sam, and meeting Milestone, meeting some of the folks on this panel, and right before this, I stepped into the gun litigation group, which, you know, was just really inspirational and really amazing. And unfortunately, you know, kind of what Adam was saying earlier, there are mass shootings and then there's everyday shootings. There's too many shootings, and you know, certainly the nonprofit groups can't be everywhere, and I think it takes this kind of partnership and this kind of interest from folks like you to, you know, to really make a dent in this problem.
Well, I guess I'll be the second to last to thank you, Sam and Milestones, for putting this event together, for inviting me to be a part of it. I owe an eternal gratitude to John for inviting me to be a part of his incredibly important efforts in Buffalo. So thank you, John. You know, this is a panel about mass shootings, and it seems like we've talked as much about suing social media companies as we have about suing gun companies. And in many ways, those industries are similarly positioned in that they both enjoy this really unique immunity, so it makes it really hard to hold them accountable. But, you know, we also talked about the fact that states are being creative and they're passing these public nuisance kind of laws in 4 states already, and many more to come, that are going to give us ways around that immunity. You know, there's I'm sure many, most of the people in the room are aware of the Gonzalez case before the Supreme Court about immunity from social media companies. And that's a case about radicalization by YouTube videos of someone who's involved in, you know, Islamic extremism and ISIS violence. But we filed a brief in the Supreme Court and said it's not just international radical terrorism, it's about white supremacist hate, it's about anti-Semitic hate, it's about these same platforms fueling gun violence in this country. We haven't talked about the incel community and the violence against women that this community does, radicalized again by these same algorithms, by these same apps. And so, we're hopeful that the Supreme Court's going to say, well, this CBA, maybe Section 230, maybe it's not as sweeping as the courts have said. And maybe that gives us something. So these industries are unaccountable, they're irresponsible, they know that what they do leads to people dying, but they feel like they can operate above the law. And I think the main takeaway I would say is these people, and many of you can join us in this effort, are trying to show these industries they can't be above the law. They're not above the law. They're going to be held accountable, and they can't operate with the impunity that they've been acting with for the last several years. So it's a challenge. It's very difficult, but there's hope, and I hope that's what we can take away in part of it.
Picking up on what Adam was saying profoundly, I pray to God that this isn't true, but I'm a civil rights lawyer to my court. I know I work with community around the country, and personally doing plaintiffs work and mass torts and everything, but still civil rights lawyer to my court. And I think a lot of this proliferation in the message and why everybody got to have guns is playing on racism and xenophobia, sexism. I mean, just the least common denominator amongst us. That's what they keep playing on. They keep selling a lot of white people guns because they keep saying, oh, we got to get ready for when we have this race war. And, they just trying to play on all our fears and all of this stuff. We have to fight against that with everything we have. So the big thing I think that you take away from it is we have to say we're better than this. Number one, we have to go back and we have to remember we as moral-minded people have a moral obligation to oppose unjust laws, even when they say, well, it's the law. We have to remember what Martin Luther King said in his letter from the Birmingham jail. And, I still think it's one of the greatest essays ever written in the course of human history when Dr. King talks just about that. We're going to call ourselves good people, moral people. You can't look at evil and turn the other way. You can't look at injustice and turn your head and say, well, it's not affecting me or my family. No, we have to say, we're going to take a stand and we're going to oppose these unjust laws, these immoral laws. And remember, a big part in that letter was when he talked about that just because they tell us legal, it's legal. He said that doesn't make it right. He said we got to remember that everything Hitler did to the Jews in Germany, they said was legal, but that didn't make it right. And he said everything they did to black people in America during slavery, they said was legal, but that didn't make it right. Segregation, he said was legal, but that didn't make it right. And we gotta say, just because they tell us these gun laws are legal, that don't make it right. And we gotta make sure that we use the law as an instrument for good and not as a weapon for evil. Every day we got to take that commitment that the law is going to be an instrument for good. And we cannot let the enemies of equality use it as a weapon for evil. And with that commitment every morning, I have no doubt we will get these laws changed and we will have more precedent to prevent these mass shootings. What, out of every week, we have it sometimes twice a week in America. We can do this, y'all. We got to make sure the laws are an instrument for good.
If anyone's open to projecting as a question, now would be the time. Looking out. Does anybody have any questions they want to ask the panel?
I have a question. Who told me that there was an algorithm to make people buy shoes?
Shoes.
Take a look at
the resources that are out there. Thank you. I was recently retained by the city of San Jose in California to defend an ordinance that it just passed requiring all gun owners to have insurance for their guns to cover accidental and negligent harm. Seems like a pretty straightforward law. We're being sued by multiple gun organizations right now and people. And I knew nothing about gun law before I took this case. And I used Brady, actually, I wrote an advocacy brief for us, and I've spoken with folks from Giffords in every town to educate myself, and we just won at the motion to dismiss phase in the district court, largely. Because of the resources that I drew on to learn what I needed to learn to make that argument, and the arguments were complicated. And Brady wrote an advocacy brief at the district court level, which is kind of weird, but that was very persuasive to help support the understand point of view. We're going to be appealed, it's going to go on forever, but the point is it's doable, and I can do it, anyone can, and you know, there's a lot of battles to be fought, and there's a lot of people that know what they're doing out there that you can ask for help from. So I just wanted to share that.
Awesome. Well, in closing, thank you, everybody. Thank you so much. Looking across my country to be here today. Thank you all for attending.